Good morning, everyone. So I know this may be a rough way to start your morning, but um, I kind of want to deal with the some of the hardest parts first and get it out of the way. Um, Sorry, my radio. So today, or this week, for the first week, I want the topic to be about shame and guilt. And this is probably, in my opinion, and I would definitely want to hear your guys' comments and your thoughts on this as well. But um, in my opinion, dealing with the shame and the guilt is actually the worst part, the hardest part, because okay, so when I say shame, to me, shame means a couple of different things, and I don't mean shame as in, you did something wrong, or, like you're getting in trouble type of thing. Although it can fall into that. When I talk about shame, I'm talking about those of us who have been sexually abused, or even wrapped into a situation when we were a child that we felt responsible for keeping the secret, so to speak. Um, but um, so I want to talk about our bodies and how our bodies work. And I know that we're all adults and we know how our bodies work, and sex and pleasure versus pain and all that. But when you're dealing with shame that is specifically related to sexual abuse, so for example, so if you are, let's say you're 8 years old and you are sexually abused, and your body responds in a way that your mind does not, doesn't, it doesn't want, doesn't want you to respond to. It doesn't, your mind knows that something is going on that shouldn't be going on, but your body is nerve endings, right? So, um, let's say that you're 8 years old and you're being sexually abused and you have an orgasm. But at 8 years old, you don't know what an orgasm is, right? You just know that your body's doing something. You don't understand what's happening, all this kind of stuff. Um, and then you fast forward into your either teen, adult, whenever you had your first orgasm as a grown up, when you wanted to have one. Let me put it that way. And your body does this thing, and suddenly you remember being 8 years old and being abused and having your body respond in the same way, right? So your mind doesn't respond in the same way, but your body does. So all of a sudden you're flooded with all of these thoughts and feelings of, well, why is my body doing the same thing that it did when I was 8, when this person was touching me and they weren't supposed to be touching me? And how is that the same as what I'm doing now with this person that I care about and that I love, and it felt good, and my body was, I wanted my body to respond this way, but why are they the same? So this can turn into, and I hope nobody here is offended by language, because I curse like a sailor, sorry, but it's an absolute mind fuck, right? So because you're trying to figure out what could possibly be wrong with you, how sick do you have to be to have had an orgasm when you were being sexually abused in this horrible and traumatic situation, but to have this pleasure response in your body the same as you just did with this person that you wanted to be with. Um, so when I talk about shame, that it's revolving around that. So I want to talk about how that, first of all, that's a normal thing to think, that you're thinking, um, what the hell is wrong with me? Why did I quote unquote like what happened to me when I was a kid? Because, geez, I must have liked it, right? If my body did the same thing when I just liked what this person did to me and it did the same thing. So, and it doesn't mean that all of us have experienced that. Not everybody has been through the same things. So this may or may not relate to you, but it probably does in one way or the other, because it doesn't have to be orgasm. It can be, somebody was kissing you inappropriately when you were a child and your body got the tingles, just like when you're kissing or making out with somebody that you like. or they touched you in a way that your body responded to, but you don't understand what's happening when you're young. You don't know what your body's doing, so you don't get it. And so this is why, to me, there's like these little milestones as you go along through life after you've been abused, that new triggers, new things come up at different points in your life, right? So I did not go through any counseling when I was a child, but even if I had, that's not something that would have been dealt with when I was a child, right? Because I wouldn't have been able to say to them, oh, my body responded in this way and it felt good, right? Because my abuse to me did not feel good, but my body still did things that I didn't give it permission to do. So on top of being violated from a person, you now feel violated by your own body, which is almost worse than what this person has done to you. But you don't realize this until you get older. So even if you went through counseling and you had to do the doll, I'm sorry, I know it's inappropriate laughter, but when you see the doll on TV, some people think it's a joke, that there's this doll. Show me on this doll where I hurt you. There's all these memes going around. But unless you've actually been in the situation, you don't know that that doll is real. So anyway, you wouldn't have been able to, as a child going through counseling, you wouldn't have been able to talk about this part of it because you wouldn't even have understood this part of it as far as how your body works, right? So what I want to talk about is, I know it's really difficult, I know it's awkward and uncomfortable, and I only want people to share as much as they are comfortable sharing, because my goal is not to push people over the edge here. So you may cry, and that's okay. Crying's good, get it out, but I don't want people having panic attacks and PTSD flare-ups and stuff, which, in fairness, it may happen, but the difference is that you probably live with PTSD and panic attacks anyway, right? So the difference here is that by having one in this environment and under these circumstances is something that is temporary. This is something that we're working through so that you can stop having that. So you can choose to push through that and to just push. Don't push yourself over the edge, but push as far as you can push yourself and have it be temporary and be able to work these things out. Or you can keep stuffing it down and pretend it's not there and have panic attacks anyway, but they're out of your control. They pop up when you're not prepared for them. They pop up when you don't want them to. So I want today and this next few days until next Wednesday when we'll start a new topic, but I want it to be focused around shame and guilt and what made you feel ashamed and what things did you feel guilty for as a child or that you still feel guilty for now. So talking about the body and shame, one thing that made it all make sense in my mind is that, so if somebody touches you in a way on, physically, and it feels good, even though your mind saying, stop, I don't like this is horrible. And this is part of why abuse really fucks with people so much, is because your mind and your body are not connected. They're not on the same page. Okay. So, but one thing that helped me make sense of this and helped me realize that there's no shame and that I wasn't sick and twisted and all of this. So first of all, you have the grooming process, which if you were abused for any period of time, this person, they've groomed you beforehand. They've built trust with you. They've made you somehow end up feeling like you participated willingly. And it's very common for abusers to also tell their victims, whoops, I used the V word, but at that time you were being victimized, but we're going to use the word survivor because none of us are victims, right? We are survivors. We're still here. We're doing this. So that's something to be proud of. So, but they tell their survivors that, don't tell, you'll get in trouble, blah, blah, blah. So you automatically feel like somehow they have brainwashed you into thinking that this is a mutual sorry about that, that this is a mutual agreement. And you're somehow going to get in trouble if people find out what you're doing. So there's that shame and guilt as well. So I want to talk about that too. But as far as the body responses go, the thing that really helped me get over this and accept that the body, you have your mind and you have a way of connecting pleasure and physical sensations in your mind too, right? So like with your husband or your partner, you can willingly, you can just think about them and create a body response, right? So there is a difference there. But your body also responds to things that your mind does not agree to. So, and the one thing that helped me kind of put this in a way that made sense to me was if I walk up to you right now and I stab you in the leg with the needle or a knife, it's going to hurt, right? It's going to hurt like hell, and your mind definitely did not give permission for that. Your mind did not participate willingly in me stabbing you in the leg, but it responded, right? So, and why is that? So I want to talk about that just super, super briefly. That the reason for that is obvious because our body is made up of a nervous system. Our body is covered in, I don't even know how many nerves. It's a lot. A billion? I don't know. It's a lot. Literally every centimeter of your body that you touch, you can feel something. So if I come up to you and I stab you in the leg with a needle and that hurt you against your will, then how are you any more responsible for this pleasure response as you are the pain response? Okay, so I really want you to think about that and ask yourself that. If this is a type of shame that you've carried around and something that you have struggled with and thought, God, I must be sick, I must be twisted, why did I quote unquote like what they were doing to me? Because you're only thinking on a physical level and not a mental level, right? So think about that and think about if they had stabbed you in the leg with a needle and you hated it and it hurt, you're no more responsible for that pain response as you are for a pleasure response, because it's literally separate your mind from your body for that moment and realize that you're literally just a bundle of nerve endings, and they are there for a specific function. They're there to respond to pleasure, to respond to pain, to tell you that you've been touched, to tell you that something's hot, all this stuff. So you are not responsible for anything that your body did or didn't do during your abusive situations. You are not responsible. There's nothing to feel ashamed of if you had that response, because this was just your nerve endings responding in a way that they were literally built to respond to. Just the same as they would if I stabbed you with a needle and it hurt. You are no more responsible for that than you are for what your body did during abuse. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about, as openly as we can. It's just us girls here, as openly as we can about that type of guilt and what we've been carrying around for who knows how long. I also want to talk about shame, and I also want to talk about the guilt that I mentioned earlier, which would be the guilt of if you tell someone you're going to get in trouble. So then again, you grow up thinking that you somehow participated because you didn't tell, and you somehow silently agreed to this because they brainwash you. That's what grooming is. They train you to believe that you're going to get in trouble if you tell because you're not supposed to be doing this. So the violation from that type of abuse goes way deeper than just the physical part, as we all know. In fact, to me personally, this isn't for everybody. Some people are different, but for me personally, the mind fuck part of the abuse is way worse than anything anybody could do to me physically. So because it's easier to then, I don't know, to deal with more of the physical part of it, but what happens to the mind as time goes on and you start to put all these pieces together and these types of things come up, like we're talking about the shame and the physical sensations, they come up as you go throughout your life. And that is why this inner child work is for everyone. It doesn't matter if you've been to counseling once or twice or 10 times. It does not matter if you've been to counseling nonstop since your abuse happened. Inner child work is unique in how it helps you heal. It is not the same as just sitting down and talking to someone. So before we dig into my personal technique on how to heal your inner child, I want to spend this first week of our time together talking about these really difficult things, the shame, the guilt, anything that comes up for you that triggered you during this video. Put it in the comments, share your story, share your personal experiences with these types of emotions or something along the same lines. But anything that came up for you listening to this very uncomfortable topic, just share it and talk about it. We've all, if you look at the poll, I think every one of us in the group has actually experienced sexual abuse, which is both very, very sad and a little bit shocking because it's horrifying to me how often this happens and how little it's talked about. Some people would wish that I didn't talk about it so much because it's uncomfortable, but I am tired of the taboo that is around childhood sexual abuse, because people don't realize that the abuse doesn't end when that person stopped touching you. The abuse continues throughout your lifetime until you deal with it, really, really deal with it. So I want to hear your stories. I want to hear your comments, your thoughts. If you're not ready to share an actual story, then just tell me what you thought and what you felt listening to this. You know, just anything that you want to talk about or add, drop it in the comments. Love y'all.